My name is Irwin, Anolik. I live in the Fairfax, Virginia area, and my main job is with the federal government as a statistician for the Department of Agriculture. And then on the side, I work at the Apple store in Tyson's Corner, the first Apple store in the world, and I am a creative trainer, so I train our customers on everything Apple. I do play drums and percussion in a couple different projects. One of them is local with my next door neighbor.
Oh God, make me a Halloween from which the pit of self flows, that I may become a channel clear through which thy love may flow. And I commit my own self into the hands of thee. You are my guide, teacher and king. And I have left behind me impatience and discontent, and I will chafe no more at my line.
This is Allison. She's my oldest daughter. Now that picture was when she was much younger. She's now about twice as old, and she and her son live in North Carolina. This is Nathan. He's my middle child. He's now 33. He lives in Pensacola, Florida with his lovely wife and their 3 beautiful children, which of course are my grandchildren. And that's Evan, and he is 31. And he's got 2 dogs, one of whom is crazy.
Patience, hope and gratitude.
I was born in 1957. I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was also born into a large family of 7 kids. I am 6th of 7, next to the youngest. We were 6 boys and a girl. And of course, my sister's the best. She had to put up with a lot. Also born into a Jewish family. Not a religious family, but had a strong identity as being Jewish, but not necessarily following all the rules and regulations. My dad got very ill when I was a little kid, and I was probably about 7. And about 5 years later, he actually had a heart transplant. Operation was very successful, but unfortunately back then, because it was experimental, they had no drugs to deal with the rejection. So everybody was eventually succumbing to rejection. He was no exception. So he lived for 15 months with a new heart. He did die when I was 12. It was a very interesting house to live. A lot of activity, as you can imagine. And especially like me being in grade school, all my older siblings were getting into middle school and high school, so they had a lot of their friends over and a lot of activity. I think somebody referred to our house as Grand Central Station at one point. And my mom was very permissive. We spent countless hours just playing outside, going to the park, playing in the woods, playing every sport known to the United States at the time. The schoolyard was right across the street, and it was surrounded by woods, so we had our own kind of kingdom, I should say there was a very rough patch, and mainly 8th grade and that was right after my dad passed away. So things were kind of chaotic and stressed, and, you know, financially it was very difficult. My mom didn't have a job, so we owed God knows how much money to the hospital. Of course, we could never pay it. I was in with a bunch of friends where I felt like I was in with the cool kids, but at the same time, you know, academically it was very bad. I wasn't going to school very much. You know, we were cutting class all the time. Luckily, again, very fortunately, something happened where they went a little too far, and I saw what they were doing, and I said, no, I can't be friends with them anymore, literally. I remember that day where I got on my bicycle, I rode all over the city of Pittsburgh, trying to figure out what I'm gonna do because I don't have any friends anymore. You know, I said I can't be with them, you know, and it was a good thing because I made new friends eventually. They were more interested in school. So my grades got good again. The year that I graduated is when I first noticed a drum set in my good friend's basement. I can tell you that I got really excited. I'd never played a drum set. I did, however, before that, I remember incidences where I would drive people crazy because I was constantly like beating on things. Like even people that love me, even my mom, she said, could you stop that? Because I was just, you know, I was just doing crazy things with my hands on a tabletop. I remember even one time I was hitting my friend's head and they were like, just stop it. Anyway, I had like a nervous habit of just hitting things. And so I saw a drum set, I said, hey, can I play that? And my friend Robert said, yeah, sure. He could play instruments himself, he was very good. So before you knew it, we had a band. So that summer, before we went all off to college, we just spontaneously formed a band. And we had a performance at the end of the summer before everybody had to go. And there I was in a band. I just sat down and didn't quite know what I was doing. But, you know, I had a good sense of rhythm, so I was faking it pretty good. So I started out at Penn State as an earth science major. Eventually, I graduated Penn State with a degree in geography. Initially, I went back later to study statistics. While I was there, however, as a freshman, I came across a table that was set up in the Student Union building. I was already interested in different faiths and different spiritual traditions, so I was what you would call a seeker, although I still feel like I'm a seeker, to be honest with you. But at the time, I was really just investigating a lot because I wasn't really happy with much of what I saw in organized religion, which included Judaism. You know, I looked at Judaism and Christianity and other Eastern traditions, and at some point I got turned off because there would come a time where they would say, we are kind of like the best and everybody else is them. And so that would just turn me off and I was like, I'm not coming back, that's it. I lost interest. I came across this table at the Student Union building. There were 3 people sitting there. I still remember their faces and their names. Susan, Hassan, and Ira. Susan, Christian, Hassan, Muslim from Turkey, and Ira, Jewish. The people at this table were all Baha'i, and it was a Baha'i booth to inform people of the Baha'i Club at Penn State. And I noticed a pamphlet that really caught my eye because it had a lot of stars, and it said, "The Lord is one," which is, for a Jew, that's like the heaviest thing you could say. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's something that every Jew should say in Hebrew every day. And I was thinking, what is going on? So I picked up the pamphlet, I was so intrigued, and I was introduced to these 3 wonderful people. I was immediately impressed. I took the pamphlet, read it. It immediately started me on a journey because I'd never heard something explained in such a way that answered a puzzle. in Judaism. So it started me on an intriguing journey to find out, what's going on here with this Baha'i faith. What he talked about was the fact that in Judaism, there are two very big promises. There's the Messiah, and there's the return of the Jews to their Holy Land. When I realized what Baha'u'llah was saying, I was like, really? You're saying you're the promised one of all religion. Well, I need to investigate this. That was kind of my attitude. I have to admit, I wasn't looking at it as a thing that I wanted to join, if you know what I mean. It was a thing I wanted to find out about. It was an intellectual fascination. I couldn't believe, for instance, that a movement like this, with these teachings, could come out of 19th century Persia. It was unbelievable to me. So that was fascinating. And then as I learned more of the history, which was epic, the history is just epic, I was fascinated. And the teachings were, exactly what we need. I was like, that's great. I agree with everything, except I need to find out if this claim is true. Is Baha'u'llah who he said he is? And also the Bab. I was very aware that the Bab and Baha'u'llah were a twin manifestation making this claim that the promised day is here. I decided I wanted to go do this program called Ulpan. It was a program that the Jewish Federation sponsored for young people that wanted to spend some time in Israel. And I said, I want to do that. I was attracted to Israel. Part of being Jewish, I guess, it's kind of this crazy, mysterious thing, but I thought about it a lot. And then you work half the day and you study Hebrew language and culture half the day. So one of the things that happened when I was there, I was walking along the pathways on the kibbutz, and I remember walking on the pathway, literally hearing drums coming from under the ground. And let me explain. It sounds crazy, but I knew they were coming from a bomb shelter because we knew we had bomb shelters there to go to, just in case we needed to. And so when I heard the drums, I said, there's a drum set here. I asked, and they said, yeah, the drums don't belong to anybody. Anybody can play, just talk to the music director and you can play. So we formed a little international group of volunteers, with me on drums, of course. And we wound up being the main entertainment for the 40th anniversary of the founding of the kibbutz. We were like the band. And they paid us in chocolate and flowers.
Blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain, where mention of God hath been made, and His praise glorified. Blessed is the spot, and the house, and the place, and the city, and the heart, and the mountain.
Just quickly to finish up with the trip to Israel, it lasted a total of 7 months, 6 months on the kibbutz, 1 month touring on my own. My mom had decided to visit me while I was there. She had never been to Israel. She finally took up my uncle's offer to pay for her to go. And she did something that she needed to do. She said, before I go, I want to get a checkup. I'm going overseas for a while. I haven't had a checkup for a while. And she got a checkup, and they found that she had the very early stages of colon cancer. They said, you are so lucky we caught this. And they caught it, they operated, all gone. She came to visit me. I spent some time with her. It included a tour of the northern part of the country. So part of the tour was going up Mount Carmel and visiting the Shrine of the Bab. Well, the one thing that was interesting about that little stop was the Israeli tour guide just said wonderful things about the Baha'i faith. I had an unofficial minor in Middle East history. One of the most popular classes on campus at the time was Introduction to Contemporary Middle East. Because at the time, you know, through the 70s, you had the oil embargo. Then later on, in the late 70s, when I was at school, you had the Iranian Revolution. And people were really interested in the Middle East. And his class always had a couple hundred people. I took the class. I loved it. I got to know the teacher. He actually asked a handful of us, you know, to help him teach the class. So what I did, I don't know, I can't believe I had the courage to do this, but I said, Dr. Goldschmidt, I read your book. It's a wonderful book. I love it. I just wonder why you don't mention the Baha'i faith at all. And I would consider that a part of contemporary Middle East history. So Dr. Goldschmidt, who's a very eccentric, very brilliant man, said, Irwin, you have a good point there. I'll tell you what, I want you to give the lecture on the Baha'i faith to the class, and you have all 90 minutes, just you. And I was like, oh my God, it's not what I wanted you to say at all. And so the wonderful thing about that is it forced me to really dig deep and spend a lot of time reading, for instance, Shoghi Effendi. And I picked up on Shoghi Effendi's writings about the history of the Baha'i faith, and I said, oh my God, this is unbelievable. His writing style and his brilliance. I gave the talk. It was fine. I was nervous, but it forced me to really dig deep. I took the bus a lot back and forth between Penn State and Pittsburgh. And one of these times I was going, I decided that I needed to read a book, cover to cover, written by Baha'u'llah. So I went to the library and I picked out Kitab-i-Gan, the Book of Certitude. I read that book, starting with that trip, and I do remember that while reading that book and while reading how Baha'u'llah is explaining these prophecies and these concepts that literally make no sense at all, which has confused a lot of religious scholars through the ages, and people take it literally, and I would say nonsense, that's ridiculous. You know, the stars falling from the heavens, the moon and the sun losing their luster, all these things that made no sense to me, and I was like, well, that's obviously crazy. What Baha'u'llah did is he laid out a spiritual landscape, and he laid out a spiritual language, and then he described what the stars mean, what the heavens mean, what the earth means, what the sun and the moon mean, and then everything made perfect sense. And I was reading this saying, well, that's clever, that's amazing. And then I remember like hearing, figuratively speaking, like thinking to myself that I'm looking, you know, this could be what is prophesied in the Jewish Bible, in the book of Daniel, when he said that the books will remain sealed until the time of the end, but he will unseal them. So I remember thinking that, reading these things and saying, oh my God, these are fantastic descriptions that now make sense. And I remember thinking that, oh, he's unsealing the books. I started attending firesides in Pittsburgh. And the very first fireside I was at, after the meeting, the hosts found out that I was not Baha'i. It was like a father and his daughter. The lady that was there, she said, you're not Baha'i? I said, no. She goes, oh, well, I just saw you teaching the Baha'i faith and defending the Baha'i faith, so what are you waiting for? And at that point, I remember that night, I just said, you're right, you know. So I signed my card. You know. Then I went home later. I was staying with my mom. Eventually told my mom that Mommy, I guess you should know I made it official. I'm a Baha'i now. And her reaction was very precious. She said, Irwin, you know, the Baha'i faith is a beautiful faith. And maybe if I wasn't Jewish, I would be Baha'i. So her next question was, you know, can't you stay Jewish and be Baha'i? How does this work? So I had to explain that, you know, well, my heritage is always Jewish. It is what it is. I'm okay with that. But I said, in terms of religion, you know, I have to be Baha'i. And when she asked me to explain what that means, I said, look, if I recognize this as the fulfillment of what we've been waiting for thousands of years, I'm not going to just sit and watch it. I have to be part of this. And she understood. She got it. She said, okay. No matter your past, if your heart is searching, the answer will come like a breeze.